Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Redefining Wellness podcast. It's your girl Nique, and I hope that you are feeling wonderful, awesome, hey, it's amazing, and all the things that makes you you. Welcome back to the podcast that helps you to redefine the way that you view wellness, one episode at a time, so that you can take up as much space as possible on this earth unapologetically and authentically. Thank y'all so much for coming back to the show. If you are new here, ¿cómo estás? Thank you for coming. If you've been here for a while, you know the vibes, friends. Before we really kick off today's episode, please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, share with a friend. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to comment under this video. If you are listening in your earbuds, in your AirPods, please don't forget to leave us a review wherever you're listening to the show. And if you're listening on Spotify, hey, leave a comment. Remember, you engaging with this show, whether you are listening to it or you are watching it, it helps the algorithm to be like, oh, this is a real legit show. Let's show this to some more people. So thank y'all so much for doing that. Before we get started, it has been a hell of a couple of weeks. And I say that because I did not anticipate to go this long without one, having an episode out. Two, with February being as busy and eventful, blessing. But my goodness, I think I took going outside very literal because I told y'all my therapist is really like, you need to be outside, you need to be engaging with different people, you need to, create new memories and hobbies and have a life outside of work and have joy outside of, and mind you, I don't find joy in this, but find joy outside of just going to work and coming home and working out. I need to find other spaces and pockets of joy. And I've really been doing that, but I've missed you all. I've missed being on this show and, you know, talking about health and wellness. And I have so many things to talk about. There's so much that has changed, redefined with my fitness and wellness journey that I'm excited to share with you all about because maybe it'll inspire someone else to use this for their health and fitness journey. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. There's so much stuff. I've been watching TV shows, y'all. I've been watching TV shows. I've been watching documentaries. So much to discuss. There's so much music that is out, so much music discussion, a lot of things. I just went on my first girls trip of 2026, and that was a freaking ball. And I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bit tired. Auntie just woke up from a nap because I just came in from the girls' trip at like 11 o'clock last night. And I got up and went to work this morning, which is kind of diabolical, but we did the things anyway. But without further ado, let's dig into this week's episodes. I am going to talk a little bit about VO2 max and training zones and all of those things. And I know that I've probably talked about it before, but this is really important, especially as I'm getting into my late 30s. So the metrics of health and wellness that I'm using this time around on my journey, especially for 2026, are very different. And I'll get into why those things are important, not just for me, but also important for you. The ways to track it, some of my favorite pieces of equipment, all that great stuff. But before we get into the episode, of course, we have our three segments, and we're going to start it off with Song of the Week. Music. A lot of people have dropped projects. Jill Scott, J. Cole, Ari Lennox. Who else? Brett Fayez. I don't think I say his name right, but everyone has dropped a project. I literally just started listening to Brent's album. I haven't really dug into it too much. My homegirl said it's actually pretty good. Has a different sound. Y'all know he's the toxic boy, toxic R&B boy, but I really liked some of his previous projects. And if you've been listening and watching the show, y'all know I kind of just started getting into him, especially as I've been entering my Savage era. He's been really good to listen to, but I did listen to Jill's album. And I honestly, in me being almost 37, I really enjoyed the album. I really enjoyed it. And I saw a lot of mixed reviews on social media. I'm not on X. Twitter is what his mama named him. I'm calling Twitter. I've been seeing a lot of discourse on Threads, mostly because that's what I use. And a lot of people didn't really feel it. Me personally, I could tell there was a lot of musical growth for Jill, and even listening to some of her interviews that she did for this album rollout, which in all honesty, artists do not do album rollouts like that anymore. If I can recall growing up in the 99s and the 2000s, you had to do an album rollout in order to get the album sales. It wasn't until Beyonce dropped Self-Titled where she did not do any promotion, she didn't do an album rollout, and it changed the world, and now everybody thinks that they're Beyonce. Not everybody can do that. Also, fun fact, they changed the album release dates to Fridays because of Beyonce versus it used to be on Tuesdays. Y'all remember that? Write it down in the comments or send me a message if you remember that. Albums used to come out on Tuesdays. And here's why I also remember albums would come out on Tuesdays. One of my most poignant memories is I was going to the seventh grade. It was the end of sixth grade, going into seventh grade. My birthday was a week before the Survivor album came out by Destiny's Child. And Survivor came out, and Carmen the Hip Hopper soundtrack came out as well. And it gave us the Bootylicious remix featuring Missy Elliott. And I remember telling my mother, we need to go to Target. We need to go to Target because I need to get both of those albums. What money did I have? I don't know. I think my mom might have bought it for me because my birthday was like in the next week. But I remember also the Black album coming out on a Tuesday. I remember a few other CDs that I was probably really pressed to get the day that it came out. And like I said, because Beyonce dropped Self-Titled, they changed the album release dates to Fridays. But anywhoozles, I remember back in the day, people did good artist album rollouts. They would go to, at least here in the district, they would go to Downtown Locker Room. It's for, I remember years ago, West, he sat in Greenbelt Mall, well, Beltway Plaza, and he just sat there, and I think he was doing an album rollout or something, and this was before he was Kanye, and I remember listening on the radio, they was like, "We just spotted Kanye West at Beltway Plaza Mall," and da 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 da, but that was, I think that was part of his album rollout. Everyone did the mall tour thing. People did, they went to the different radio stations, you know, and of course, times have changed. And I would say before Jill Scott's album rollout, Cardi B, amazing album rollout for this recent album. And she made it so comical and she did great social media campaigning. And, you know, it was a really, really great job. And that's why that album had the opening success that it had and still has a great success. But Jill went to all the podcasts. She went on Angie Martinez's podcast. She recently went on the Spill podcast. I think it's called Spillin' the Tea. And that's where I think I was like, okay, the album is now connected to this rollout. She's talking about past experiences, and Jill is a great storyteller. She's talking about past experiences, uniting the community. It's very much a shea butter type of album. Like, it's very much for the aunties, it's for the girls that get it. I'm excited to see her on tour. And a lot of people will probably be upset because it does not sound like, who is Jill Scott? It doesn't sound like, I think she had an album called A Beautiful Day, but it doesn't sound like any, to me, it's not that Jill. This is a newer Jill. And I love that Jill loves DC so much that she has a go-go song on there. Jill loves her some DC and she always comes here to perform. And I was really glad to hear her. And she sounds so good. She sounds so clear. She's scatting it. I thought it was a very well produced album. I thought it was really good. She had a lot of rappers on there and stuff like that. I thought very bang up job, Jilly. Very bang up job. With me also listening to Jill, like I told y'all, I'm kind of in my Savage era right now. I've been listening to a lot of ratchet music. I've been listening to a lot of trap music. I started listening to Gunna. Yep, I have. And shout out to my little cousin Taj because she loves Gunna. And I don't know. I'm in this era in my life where I really connect to some savage shit. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not fully in my lover girl era. And I think I understand because I was actually telling my girlfriends on this trip, I was like, man, I want Megan to come out with some Tina Snow type of fire. And my homegirl was like, she's not, she's in love. She's not, you know. And I said, you know, you're right. You're right. And I'm not in love with anybody, and I've definitely been savagery type of music. Like I said, I've been listening to Gunna. I've been listening to 21 Savage. Like, I don't know who I'm becoming, but I'm having a good time listening to it. But I am excited to listen to J. Cole's album. I did hear some really good things about it, and I'll make sure to report back once I finally listen to it. Everybody is going on fucking tour this year. Wale is going on tour, and I'm mad that I'm probably not gonna be able to see him in DC because, of course, the DC tickets sold out, and of course, they have him in this dumbass created venue on the outside of Nats Park. Fucking stupid. Let me think. He's going on tour. J. Cole's going on tour. Um, Tony Braxton's on tour right now. Cardi B's on tour right now. Haven't heard the greatest things, but me and the girls want to go see her in Baltimore or possibly Philly. We'll see how that goes. Thank God Beyonce hasn't said anything. Thank goodness Beyonce hasn't dropped the album. She hasn't really winked at us like that musically. I did see that Rihanna is going back into the studio and she says she's dead ass serious this time. So I'm hoping Rihanna gives us a reggae album, like a full reggae album, like, and I want it to be a dance hall album. Like, I don't want this new stuff. I don't want to, she might have spice on the album, but I don't want no spice music. I want it to be like old school Shabba Ranks. I want it to be like old school Mr. Vegas. I don't want no Vibes Cartel. No. I want Briaz Hammond. I want the old shit. I want that old aunties dance hall feeling. That's what I would love to get. But she's not gonna listen to me. She's not gonna call me and say, I think, what do you want to hear on my next album? She's not gonna ask me that. I just wanna throw out some suggestions and I think it'll work, but any hoozles. So as we get into our next segment, y'all, we have What's Nique Watching, and y'all know this is where I rant and rave about different shows, documentaries, things like that I'm actually watching right now. Okay, I'm going to take my time through this because I've been watching so many things. Let's start off with the documentaries first, then we'll roll into social media, we'll roll into reality shows, and then we'll finish off with a scripted show. Okay, cool. Great. So, documentaries. I watched the Elizabeth Smart documentary. Very well done. Very well done. And I got a little emotional while I was watching that documentary because if you're not familiar, Elizabeth Smart, she was a preteen in Utah that got snatched out of her bedroom window in 2002. She was abducted for about 9 months. And honestly, where she was abducted, she wasn't even 10 miles from her parents' home. I remember, I don't know if my mom knows about this either, but I remember watching and constantly they would be on the news about her and stuff. And I was scared. I was really scared because I'm thinking, me and this woman are the same woman. Me and this girl are the same age. What if somebody comes to snatch me out my bedroom? But then I remembered my bedroom window is quite high. That's probably not happening. But I remember thinking the same thing as a child when all the John Benet Ramsey stuff happens. I remember thinking the same thing during Columbine. Like, I had a lot of different thoughts and feelings around a lot of the things that were happening, right? So, Elizabeth Smart, her documentary was well done, and I'm really proud of her family for one, keeping so much faith alive when people told them to basically stop having faith. Shout out to her daddy and her uncle. They are true riders. Her uncle's super duper rider. And it is a shame, but honestly, not too much of a shame that the police department originally made her daddy and her uncle prime suspects. And I get it because in a lot of these, abductions and child schmellings, a parent is possibly involved. Just like when they have these women that are killed or murdered or whatever, it's not typically, but statistically, it is the spouse that has done it, right? Or someone that is close to that person. But the uncle, he was a real writer and they were a Mormon. And the uncle was like, nah, fuck that. Like he was a real one. I really I like that the main police detectives, they did take accountability for, excuse me, not being a little bit more on top of it, not truly following up on leads. And her little sister saw her get abducted. And they didn't want to listen to the little sister really because they were like, oh, she's 9 years old. But she said, I know who did it. It's just I cannot remember, who it was. And it's interesting. I've read different psychology studies and I've watched enough documentaries, especially true crime documentaries, where people talk about how a traumatic event could happen and it totally like knocks out their other memories, or it's so traumatic, the people involved, that they like forget like little things. But she was 9 years old and she was traumatized and she was probably scared for her own self because her and her sister stayed in that room together. So I can definitely understand where her sister was coming from, but it was good to see that Elizabeth has gone through therapy. And one of the things that blows me about dogmatic religion is the amount of shame they can place on women, especially when it comes to anything around sex, regardless of if it was consented or non consented. There's so much shame around that, right? And she expressed that because when she was abducted, she was great. And she didn't understand that she was great. But she had so much shame before understanding what it was, just the shame around sex in general, just how could I do this? And, all of these things. And then once she realized that she was raped, because she said she had a difficult time being around men because she was so traumatized. And once she realized that she was raped and she got to go to therapy and stuff, it was just really sad. And it makes me sad for the girls that have families that are so deeply dug into the dogmaticness of religion that they don't teach their children, like, when it comes to shame and knowing that certain things are not your fault or you didn't cause this or things like that. And I was happy to see her on the other side of this and how she's grown from it and how she's turned it into a platform and space for her to help other people. What was surprising was how long it took for them to do this whole trial. And it was I wouldn't say he's a regular schmegular white man that did it, but he was high key a regular schmegular white man that grew out this really long, ugly, disgusting looking beard. And I give her super duper kudos because somehow, and this isn't somehow, I take that part back. She used some serious survival skills to be able to, one, withstand all of that, but two, people kept saying, y'all came down into town, you were around people, you had people that could have helped you. Why didn't you do anything? She said, I realized I need to live another day because what if this person really couldn't help me and I'm telling them all of these things and then I have to go back with this man and he offs me? Like, what do I do? So she waited. She knew the perfect time and the perfect opportunity. And she just, shout out to having crazy faith, like crazy faith. She knew how to survive. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. And it's agonizing to hear someone's story of like, I had to do it to survive. I needed to survive. So if this is a documentary, if you remember Elizabeth Smart, I think it's a really good documentary for you to dig into because there were so many things on the news that we didn't see, that we didn't know about. And again, if you were my age when that happened, you really couldn't fully grasp the concept of what was going on. And, to hear it from herself and her sister and her father, I thought that it was really well done. And I'm glad that Netflix gave them the space and the platform to talk about what had happened to her. I would have loved to see, like, if her mother was still alive, and she also had other siblings. It was six of them. And she was the oldest girl of the six. I think she had like one or two older brothers or something like that. But really good, really, really good documentary. So, next documentary, let's talk about America's Next Top Model. Tyra Banks, please step to the front. Please step to the front. The only beef that I have with Tyra is that she really made it seem like she had no control over the show. Like she had no control over some of those challenges and no control over the judging, no control over so much when in actuality, you're the creator of the show, babes. You're the executive producer, babes. Like you have way more control. You just wanted to manipulate reality TV. She said it, which I never knew this. She wanted it to mirror or be like a brainchild of American Idol and the real world. And America's Next Top Model was peak reality TV. Like this was the early 2000s. I want to say I was gonna say when this show came out, was there the writer's strike? And I feel like there was a writer's strike in like 2001, 2002, but I don't think that there was. I know that there was a writer's strike like later in like 2007, which is why we ended up getting so much reality TV during that time. But um America's Next Top Model was that girl. I only really, really watched the first 4 seasons, and then after that, I kind of fell off because I started watching it when I was going into high school, and I remember I stopped watching it cycle 4 when Naima Funk won, and I remember I had just turned 16, and I stopped watching it. I think internally, I felt triggered because that season, Kenya Kenya Hill, she made it all the way to, like, the final 3 or, like, the final 4, and she had gone through so much, like, she put on a little weight, but I don't even think she put on weight like that, she probably was just bloated because they was barely eating and stuff like that for real, but the way that they, like, made it seem like she was so fat, and even in cycle 3 with Takara, I loved me some Takara. I was just like, "Yes, you better put on for the thicker girls," and Takara had a boy. That was a grown woman, okay? And you figure a lot of the girls that were coming on to Next Top Model, they were like 18, 19, 20. I think the oldest model at the time that I remember from when I watched it, it was Robin in cycle 1, and she was maybe older than 25. And I remember Janice always gave her shit because she was older, and she was a little bit bigger than the other girls, but still pretty damn small, you know what I mean? So they talked about that. They talked about how a lot of the girls did not have modeling success after the show. It did not set them up to be models. Honestly, they were just reality stars. And a lot of the designers didn't want reality stars, walking in their shows because they didn't want the glitz and the glam of them being on reality TV to take away from the collection that they were creating. And it was really sad to see, especially a lot of the black girls, like the Danielles and the was it her name Dion? And I know that there are other girls out there that they didn't get the experience that like an Eva and I wouldn't even say Yaya and Takara because they became famous in their own rights. They really worked hard, and I remember Takara, she was doing a lot of, like, King magazines, and, she did get to be on a few, like, movies and television shows, and gorgeous, the baby was gorgeous, but it was really sad to watch, and I know that there's girls that are probably like, "Oh my gosh, Tyra changed my life, and I was able to do this and do that," and yes, they did get an opportunity, but it was more so the reality show that gave them the opportunity, not necessarily the modeling aspect. Them girls were saying they couldn't even use their modeling pictures in their portfolio because the pictures were too heavily makeuped, they were too heavily themed. Like it wasn't what I thought it was supposed to be. I just knew that the girls were doing print ads and walking on runways and doing all these things and they couldn't do it. Do we want Tyra Banks to take accountability? Absolutely. And does it break my heart that this woman turned out the way that she did, like the way that she's been portrayed? It does, because as a Black child, especially in the 90s, you really didn't have a lot to look up to, especially when it came to different industries. And when you looked at modeling, yes, there was the Naomi Campbells, but I feel like Naomi was for the older millennials, and I felt like Tyra was for the younger girls. Like Tyra was on Fresh Prince. Tyra did Life Size. Like she was on Higher Learning, was on she was on Love and Basketball. Tyra did so much, and I just thought it was a shame that this woman that a lot of us looked up to inadvertently became a villain, inadvertently perpetuated these same stereotypes that she was trying to fight against. And it really did a lot of harm and it did a lot of damage to a lot of women, but more so the thirst for the fame and the attention and the notoriety and the ratings. Because I'm not even going to get into Shandy, but the ratings that they were trying to go for, the shock value they were trying to go for. Like in the very beginning, I was like, wow, like this is some really good stuff. They did the cover girl stuff and I thought that was really cool. But I do, when I look back, especially like season 4 with the race swapping, And I watched Jamila Bell break down her, thoughts of the documentary while I was on the train coming home last night. And Jamila was like, the early 2000s was just a really weird time. We were all just like batshit crazy. And when I think about the early 2000s, there are a few things that occurred. Number one, 9/11 happened. So that already sent a lot of us into a frenzy. There was a lot of xenophobia during like the post 9/11, and also with like TSA being formed and, all of these things. That was a lot to take in. But then also one thing that Jay Manuel brought up was the Janet Jackson Justin Timberlake thing happened on the Super Bowl. And so that affected like the way that they could do things on television and stuff like that. And the shock value thing was really big. To have shock value too, it was crazy. But the race swapping photo shoot, I think so many of us didn't look at it from the lens of bitch, I did blackface. Like, a lot of us didn't look at it from that aspect. I think we were numb. We were a little numb because there was so much that was going on during that time. And I think it's unfortunate that so many people took so many missteps. There were so many people in the room, and there were people that could have said, we shouldn't be doing this. And they did it anyway. Even Jay Manuel, who I didn't realize that he was a South African man. I thought that man was Spanish. But Jay Manuel even said, I felt uncomfortable with it. As a South African, I really felt uncomfortable with the race swapping. So I just thought it was interesting. So many people could have said something and they did it. Praying strength to Miss J. That has to be the hardest thing in the world. You have taught so many women how to walk, and now you cannot walk. One of the main people that you taught how to walk hasn't even come to see you. And I'm really happy that the Mr. J and Jay Manuel and Nigel Barker, they're all the three of them are still really close. I really thought that that was really something special. Tyra, we're not watching Cycle 25. We're not watching Cycle 25. I didn't even know they made it to 24 cycles. We're not watching it. I'm sorry. It's over. It's dealt with, babes. I think until you can address your crimes against humanity, maybe the girls will watch it, but I highly doubt anybody's going to watch it. So let's take a little slide over to reality TV. Love is Blind. Wow. What a shit show this season is. I'm not even going to go all the way back into the pods. The pods pissed me off. They did. Tyler and Kia and Kevin thought the boy's name was Kevon. The three of them, Kia was right. Tyler, you're not ready to be a husband. You're not ready because you can't even make a simple decision. Yes, there are so many amazing, great women out there in the world, but you were stuck with just two and you couldn't make a decision and you kept flip flopping and you weren't correct. You weren't clear. I understand why Tyler got pissed off now when I think about it. Tyler was really in a state of confusion, in a state of shock of like, this doesn't feel right. Like, what the fuck am I experiencing right now? She was a little bit of a crash out though. Kia held it together a whole lot better. I think, like Kia said, she wasn't in love with him. And I think that's why Kia didn't crash out the way that Tyler did. But Tyler really blew me in the pods. I do want to watch AD from the Charlotte season. I do want to watch her podcast because she does interview the two ladies together and they kind of talk a little bit more about timelines and he said this to me and he said that to me and all of those things. They talk a little bit more about what it's like being in the pods and they just dig a little bit deeper even to some of the possible drama that we didn't see amongst the girls or whatever. But Tyler and Kia, beautiful girls. Beautiful girls. I just go through the couples and say my yays and my nays. This is potentially a spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear any of this, go ahead and fast forward through it. I'm glad that Brie and Connor broke up because Connor does not need a girl like that. I knew that Brie wasn't into Connor when they was in Cabo because she kept harping about like no one is like looking at each other. We spent this vulnerable time in the pods and no one is talking about that. Like I just don't understand. I just thought it would be a little bit deeper. It's just giving really surface level. If you was into your man the way that you should have been, you would not be worried about having conversations with anybody else or telling him, like, have you thought about talking to Emma? No, because he's with you. Why would he worry about talking to Emma? Like, he doesn't want to do that, and that's okay. That was how I knew she wasn't really into him because, like I said, if you was into your man, you would not be harping about why he's not talking to his ex or how you are just so pressed to talk to your number two and like have a conversation with him. Like that just it just sounds stupid. It just sounds maybe it's me, but it sounds really crazy, right? Okay. So I'm glad they broke up. And Brie broke up with him off some stupid shit. Somebody made a really good point. Again, let's go back to Jamila Bell because she also, I love Jamila Bell, bro. Like her and Mecca, hilarious. So Jamila said one thing that irks her, and she kind of checked me on this too, is that the way that we look at what being ambitious looks like, and everyone can be at different levels of ambition. And she said, for Bree to be like, I just want somebody that's ambitious, a go getter, this, that, and the third. Jamila was like, well, maybe Connor has already made it to where he wants to be with his career and where he wants to be with his life. Everybody has to get to that point that they're chasing, right? And Jamila brought up herself, and I'll even bring up myself. I'm ambitious because I know that there's a certain level that I'm trying to get to. I know that there's certain experiences that I'm trying to have. I know that there is certain amounts of money that I want to make. There's certain platforms, visibility that I want to have. So I am still actively working and actively ambitious to reach this particular goal. For Connor, maybe he's reached that goal. Like everybody's goal levels is different. And, one thing that Jamila brought up, she said capitalism does have us very warped to believe that you just have to keep grabbing, 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 grabbing. And it causes that hustle mentality. It causes that shit. You know what I'm saying? And she checked me. I'm not even going front. Check the fuck out of me. Glad I watched her on TikTok. But they really blew me. All right, let's get into Chris and Jessica. I actually just watched this little clip, and this lady was talking about how they actually had a discourse about their political affiliations because Chris is a Trumper and Jessica is not. And apparently that also was a space of contention for their relationship. But she said a lot of the couples, that was a space of contention, but they didn't show that on Netflix. And it's funny because somebody mentioned that they have to be having these politics conversations, but they're just not showing it. And the only one that they showed was when Ashley and Alex were in front of her father, and the father asked, like, did you vote? And that whole thing. So I thought it was really interesting for Chris to say, "Oh, she's not a Pilates kind of girl." Right? Like, I don't want somebody that wants to get up and work out and wants to do this. She's an internal medicine doctor. Like, she works a tough job. It's it's I wouldn't say it's torturous to be an infectious diseases doctor, but you see a lot of things. You're dealing with people with infectious diseases. What do you mean? So for him to you fall in love in the pods and you're, this, that, and the third, and to be like, oh, I just want somebody that is going to want to go for a run at 5 a.m. or want to go do this or go do that. Why y'all didn't talk about that in the pods? Why you waste this lady's time? You know what I mean? And why would you think that because you said that she's going to change who she is for you? Probably because you're used to that. But she wasn't doing that. She knew from jump in that conversation they had, they must have had some kind of not some kind of conversation. They had a conversation before they broke up, and she very much was looking at him like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this." And it hurt her. But she was like, "I'm not doing this. I'm not dealing with this. Are you crazy? Are you nuts?" So it was also sad to see the way that Chris's demise, like he went and talked shit on Connor right in front of Bree. That's also how I knew she wasn't shit. Because why would you sit there? And that's how I also knew she didn't like Connor. Because why would you sit there and you let that man say all that stuff about your man? Because if it was a man that I was in love with, that I was into, that I was feeling, that I was like getting a yeah from, I wouldn't let no man sit in my face and tell me how my man is this, that, and the third, and how he's better than my man, and how this, that, and the third. I would never let that happen. I would have walked away. Like, what? I would have, somebody said she should have threw her drink on him or something. I thought that was crazy. And then for him to turn around and try to then think he was going to reconcile with Jessica and then try to gaslight her and do all these things. Jessica handled that conversation with so much maturity. And kudos to you, babe. You're one of the stars of this season. The girls were actually more of the stars this season. Amber and Jordan, very healthy. They had their first little fight. Amber is a mom. Word on the street is she's probably not really 30, 33. Not word on the street, just word on the street with my girlfriends. They're like, she cannot be 33, but it's cool. They seem very in a level of healthy. It's definitely giving that he likes her more than she's like into him. Very much black cat golden retriever. He is the golden retriever. But I love a jolly, kind of thicker, type of man because they're so much fun. They're goofy. They love to eat. They love to cook. She's in good hands. She's gonna be fine. She did say to Chris when Chris tried to talk all this like cash money shit in front of her, Jordan. She was like, "So what? You think you're gonna get another hot doctor?" And, like, played in his face, and as she should have. Like, "Yeah, you dummy. You think you're about to get another baddie like that? Are you nuts? You probably could only get a baddie by going on a show like this, but whatever." Alex and Ashley. Alex is a scammer. He's a scammer. As soon as that man said he was a day trader, I knew he was a scammer, and this is from previous experiences. I knew he was a scammer. And and they haven't said it. I just know in my heart he is a scammer. He is a scammer. The way that he like overly talks is scammer energy. It's giving liar. It's giving liar, liar, pants for hire. It's giving all of those things. And it's giving manipulation tactic. The girl, I don't know if she's trying to play the long game so she can make it to the altar, but Ashley, baby, get away from him. Like, your daddy is right. Your daddy said, I don't think he's a bad guy. I just don't think, him and honesty get along. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, you should know better than that. I just feel like, are you not seeing this? And then he tried to like, you want some nuggets? What? Get the fuck out of my face. Do I want some nuggets? And then you try to make it seem like you know her so well. Like, boy, get the fuck. Child. But I'm ready for them to expose that he's a scammer. And if they say he's a scammer, I'm going to do backflips in my apartment. Okay. I really think he's a scammer. Victor and Christine, healthy. But I think that there's something there that we don't know about. I would not be surprised if Victor did not, and I hate to say this about a black man, but I feel like there might be, especially with his relationship with his mom and his family, something's a little rare. But they are very healthy. They are giving them the short end of the stick. They're the seventh couple. They only have budget to do six couples, which is kind of crazy because the last time I checked, don't people be paying like $30 for their Netflix subscriptions? But okay. They're not getting like I don't think they're staying in the apartments where the couples are staying. They didn't get to go to Cabo. Like they went to Malibu, which Malibu is not cheap. So I don't know. But they are giving healthy. It seems healthy, but I think because the cameras aren't in their faces all the time, we're not getting like the full tea, if you will. And I'm trying to think, Lord, Mike and Emma. Mike, Italian. Love it. I love me an Italian man. Oh my gosh. If I was to marry a white man, he's going to be Italian or he's going to come from an Italian American family. That girl looked at that mother and she said, what do you like to sew? What do you like to cook? And Emma going to say, I like to cook spaghetti. As soon as she said, I like to cook spaghetti sauce, I was thinking, you mean marinara sauce? And then she was like, oh no, we call it gravy. And I was like, okay, that sounds about right. Because my homegirl, she said the same thing. She was like, no, they call it like gravy, Italian Americans, or whatever. But I'm just like, girl, why would you tell them people that you like to cook tomato spaghetti sauce? Why would you do that? Like, stop that. But the baby needs to go to therapy. She is going to therapy. She doesn't know, she doesn't know herself. She's having an identity crisis. She doesn't want to have kids, but I feel like she's letting Mike sway her to have kids because she wants to be chosen so bad. And I don't see it. They've made it down the aisle and they left us with a cliffhanger, of course. And she said yes. I don't think Mike is going to say yes. And I know that if he says yes, his mother is going to flip a table like Teresa Giudice. I would not be surprised. She won't flip that table, baby. You hear me? Even her sister, like when Emma said yes, her sister rolled her eyes so hard because her sister is thinking like, why are you doing this? You're getting with somebody that wants kids and you always talked about not having kids, So I've never been one to be like, I take that back. Let's be honest for a second. Once upon a time, I was I'll do it for him. Now, no, absolutely not. Better want it. If I don't want it, ain't nobody getting nothing. But I don't see them progressing, to be honest with you. I don't see that for them. There's too much. And even Mike brought up the baby situation in his vows. So he's really like not, I don't think he's checking for her like that because of that. He loves her, but I think he's going to think a little bit more clearly like, I don't think that we should be together because we have so many different views when it comes to having children. And he wants to have children right away. Okay. So that's what I think when it comes to them. But this season overall, it's been really interesting. I do like to watch Love is Blind because it makes you have these dialogues with yourself about dating and relationships. And it's also a great conversation piece if you watch it with your girlfriends or your friends. And you get to hear other people's perspectives. And, I really like it for that reason. I will say that every season we get some new dating calamity that we all should discuss, and we kind of learn how to work through it together. Unfortunately, it's at someone else's expense, but it's still a great conversation. Oh yeah, I forgot one couple, Brittany and Devontae. Stop playing with us. Don't fucking piss me off. Yeah, not happening. Not happening. That boy is not into her. He's not feeling her. And also, I saw some stuff on TikTok that says he's also like on his scammer type time. He only came onto the show for exposure, but it's like you came onto the show for exposure. You're ugly. God, stop. Anthony, stop. On the internet, they said he looks like a Ninja Turtle. Britney's gorgeous. Britney's a baddie. Britney is a baddie. Okay. Jamila calls her the big titty Colombian. Gorgeous girl. Very beautiful. But he's not into women of color. And she's really not into him. I think he's too light for her. I think she's mostly has dated black men. I really think that either she's dated black men or she's dated other Afro Latinos, Latinx community. So I don't see them working out. And it's so sad because you waste people's time. I feel like you met her parents and you did all this stuff and you're not really feeling me. Because I don't care what anybody says. When you feeling somebody, you adapt to the things that they want and they need. She needs a little more reassurance because you don't like she needs the reassurance because you don't ever tell me that I'm pretty. You don't make it seem like you're into me. You don't make the first moves. You don't touch me. You don't, those are clear signs that you're not even like sexually attracted to me. You know what I mean? She even told him, she was like, if we need to have sex for you to feel the connection, like we can, which is also really sad to say. What if I have to tell a man? I mean, we can have sex if you need, if you need that to feel further connected. What? Girl, get up. Get up. But like I said, very interesting season. I wonder where they're going next because the season before this was Denver. I think the season before Denver was like Minneapolis. They're one of these really podonky ass cities. And I understand why they probably don't want to do it LA or New York because you're not going to get an authentic pool of applicants and candidates. So I absolutely get why they're going to these like little small podonky ass, you know what I'm saying? So, they got that one. The last show, because I told you I've been watching a lot. It's been like a month. The last show that I got into is Paradise. And I'm going to watch the last 2 episodes of season 1 tonight. Wild show. First of all, Sterling K. Brown and James Marsden. James Marsden still looks good. We praise him. We praise him. Okay. Do they have a saying for like white people? Like, you know how black people say black don't crack and Asian people say Asian don't raisin? Is there something that the white folks that don't like age badly? Is there something that white folks say when they're like super fine and they never stop being fine? Like I said, black don't crack, Asian don't raisin. I don't know what the Latin community says to each other, but James Marsden, baby. My favorite James Marsden is when he was Corny Collins on Hairspray. And he did a few man, that's a white boy right there. Sterling K. Brown. I love the range that he has because this is a Dan Fogelman project. And if you're not familiar with who Dan Fogelman is, he's actually the writer and the creator of This Is Us, which Sterling K. Brown was in. And Sterling K. Brown played a completely different character than the character that he plays here in Paradise. And it's a very like utopian tale of like the government and like other crazy shit, right? It's the show is honestly mind blowing. I wasn't expecting it for it to be the way that it was. I wasn't expecting for it to be this like political thriller and I'm really, really impressed with the show. They do have season 2 out. I'm only 6 episodes into season 1. Luckily, season 1 is only 8 episodes. So I'm gonna finish those up tonight. I'm not gonna give too much of it away. Just know it's a really good show. I did put on Threads that I was watching Paradise, and then the Paradise social media account commented on it and said, "Buckle up." They wasn't lying. They wasn't lying. My jaw was dropped on so many episodes, okay? I haven't had a jaw-dropping experience, I think, like this maybe since This Is Us, and I'm also still watching I still have to get back into the morning show. The morning show had some jaw-dropping moments too, but boy, this was a jaw-dropping experience. So, if you have Hulu, make sure to check it out. Let's talk about it. We'll talk about it next week once I finish it, and I'm not gonna get started with season 2 until my girlfriends get started with season 2, so we're all gonna watch it together. We're gonna wait for all the episodes to come out, and then we'll watch it and comment and, do all of the things. This was a long catch up. We really needed to catch up before we got into this week's episode. And last but not least, the final segment is, and so my therapist said, and y'all know this is moments where my therapist has drugged me by my front teeth, but also has given me something that I can really take with me. Lately in therapy, we've really been talking about me living and forging the life for myself that I want to experience, especially with me being single, not having children. I really don't have roots planted anywhere. And having the more of the gumption to use my free will to travel and to have experiences and to meet people, but even in the space of like dating. And I know that I've talked about some of my dating sagas and dating woes on here. And right now, because I honestly had this moment in therapy and my therapist brought it out too. Because I was in a relationship for so long, I'm really going to slow down with trying to find my forever person. And I shouldn't be finding my forever person. They're supposed to find me. So my goal is to have a great dating experience, to meet new people, to try new things. Honestly take a lot of the pressure away from what we have been told that dating is supposed to be because, growing up, especially for Black women, I don't know if this is the same thing for white women or Hispanic women or anything like that, but we were never told to like just date, to just casually date, to meet people, to have experiences, to learn things. You're just told you date and then get married. We're just told, you stay with one person. Like we're told, don't be a whore, don't get pregnant. But then we end up having these really disastrous dating experiences, these really disastrous relationship experiences because we haven't had enough experience to know what we actually want, what we want to experience, how do we want to be feel, how do we want to be treated, and also how do you put love out there? And I think a big disservice, especially for Black women, is that we grow up thinking that we are these do no wrong and we really don't have any faults and you know, at least I was kinda raised like that. Do I still kinda feel like that? Yeah. But life and being in previous relationships have taught me sometimes I'm the problem. Sometimes I am the problem. And it's okay for me to admit that out loud. Sometimes I am the problem. But I'm really in a space of exploration and a space of elevation, evolution. Remember, I talked about being ambitious. I'm in my ambitious bag right now. So, really trying to experience new things and really trying to set myself up for the best life possible because I have to set my life up in case I don't meet somebody, or I don't end up having children. So I want to have the best life possible while not waiting on someone to experience life, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the bag or the bubble that I'm in. And also my therapist has been really trying to get me to find that good work-life balance and to get rid of the perfectionism. I think sometimes I get so caught up in it has to be perfect. It has to look a particular type of way or else it sucks and nobody wants to see it and it's not good enough. You know what I mean? So I've really been working through that, getting rid of that perfectionism. This also is a perfect segue into my health and my wellness journey. Right now, I am about 2 months shy of turning 37, and I purchased a scale, and I got a body impedance scale. And the body impedance scale that I purchased is from Our Belief. Shout out to my homegirl Kayla because she has the scale, and she actually told me about it. I preferably got this scale because not only does it give you your body fat percentage and your muscle mass, but it also gives you your bone density It gives you your visceral fat, and it gives you like a few other metrics that I think are really important, especially the metrics that I know about being an exercise scientist. I stepped on the scale and I didn't gain weight from last year, but I didn't lose no weight either. However, according to that scale, I did not lose a significant amount of muscle mass, right? It's just my body fat percentage went up, my visceral fat went up. And my goal is to increase my muscle mass, increase my free fat mass. That is all of your mass. So that's your water, your bones, your blood, your tendons, all of your things, your ligaments, everything except your fat. That's one weight. And then my fat is another weight. And my goal is to lessen my body fat percentage. When I was down to a size that I enjoyed, that I liked, I think I was like between 30, maybe like 35% body fat, but I had a higher free fat mass, free fat in mass. I think I was like almost 30 pounds more free fat mass versus my body fat. So my goal is to convert that fat into muscle. So I have adopted using ChatGPT. Sorry, guys, because sometimes my brain can't take it. But for the meal portion, the exercise portion, I got that down pat. But the meal portion, I have used ChatGPT so that I could create a anti-inflammatory diet to help me to reduce my inflammation, but also to help me with my tummy. Because over the last couple of months, I've been experiencing these issues with my gut, and I know it's my gut because I've noticed well, like that I'll be tired. Notice that my poop is a little. I'll notice like little things, and even too, I've noticed that my skin is like a little dull, and that's because my body was absorbing the nutrients the way that I would have wanted it to, as well as absorbing the water, like hydration properly. So, my goal is to increase my water weight or increase my percentage of water, increase my muscle mass by doing that with the anti-inflammatory diet that also puts like a big like spotlight on my skin. So, I've been eating a lot of salmon, taking my vitamins, a lot more protein. Y'all, when I say I'm eating a lot of protein, I'm putting protein powder in my oatmeal. Okay. I start my day off with a cup of bone broth. If I don't have bone broth, I'll have warm water with lemon. I should have got some ginger tea while I was at Trader Joe's, but nonetheless, that's something that kind of helps me to like boost my immune system, not my immune system, my metabolism and my digestive system, and kind of give my gut like a nice little refresh every day before I start eating food. And then I'll have my oatmeal. So like this week I have oatmeal with protein powder and I put like a little bit of almond on top. The protein powder gives it the sweetness, so I don't add any sweetness to it. And then for lunch this week, I have ground beef, brown rice, and vegetables, as well as like a little of guacamole. And then I have a half of a protein shake, a banana, or something like that. And then for dinner, I have salmon, asparagus, or some kind of vegetable, and sweet potatoes. And then for dinner, I have a yogurt bowl and I'll throw like some little crunchies, like some little granolas on top, and I'll have some extra almonds. If I have like bananas in the house, then I'll put, oh, look, there's bananas behind me. If I have bananas, I'll put bananas on top of that yogurt bowl too. And I will say, doing it for 2 weeks, it felt really good. When I got my scale, I think I didn't put it together till like the next week. And I stepped on the scale and I saw what my weight was, blah, 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 blah. That was a Monday morning. That was after I was outside like 3 days the week prior. So I stepped on the scale, saw what my weight was, did the whole body impedance. Thursday, after following the diet for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning I got on the scale after I pooped and I had dropped 6 pounds and my water weight went up, my muscle mass went up, my body fat went down. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. That's interesting because all I did was really increase my water and I took out a lot of the caffeine. And I was just been lifting. I've been lifting and doing my cardio and stuff, but more so I've been eating more properly. Cause I would have moments if I don't meal prep, I'm eating all over the place. I really am, and I'm glad that it's bringing structure back into my life. and I feel happier about it. One of the things also that I'm doing on this fitness journey is I'm working on my VO2 max. And if you're unfamiliar with your VO2 max, that is your look. I always got to pull my phone out because I say it right, but I don't say it right at the same time, which is sad because what am I? An exercise scientist, and I don't say VO2 max correctly. Your VO2 max or your maximal oxygen consumption measures the maximum rate of oxygen your body can use during intense exercise. This is a key indicator for cardiovascular fitness and longevity. Generally, a good score varies by age and sex, with higher values indicating better health. Average healthy Americans often have scores between 30 and 40 milliliters per kilogram per minute for men and slightly lower for women. So, for me at my age, I am at, I think the last time I checked, I was at like 26% or 26 was my VO2 max. And that's not good. To me, I feel like that's not good. And even with Apple was like, bitch, get it together. But your VO2 max, well, how I look at it is your cardiovascular endurance. You still need to work your heart. Your heart needs to still be strong and the muscles still need to be worked in those higher intensities so it can pump that oxygenated blood throughout your body. Remember, your brain needs the oxygen. You need that. It's important. So the more oxygen that your body can pump during exercise, the better. And that also leads to a good, I don't want to say a resting life, but when you're not exercising, it also means that your heart is working efficiently at rest as well, or at maximal efficiency at rest. So, I'm really happy that I'm finding my VO2 max and I'm using that as my fitness gauger and not just my body and, how much fat and stuff I do have. I will say watching that America's Next Top Model documentary was, I don't wanna say it was super triggering, but it was kinda triggering because I thought about 13, 14-year-old Antonique and how it felt to watch those shows, and they tell women like Takara and Robin and Kenya how they were fat, and it was like, "Whoa, if they're fat, what am I, bitch?" And so taking my health and not focusing on the way that I look has been a very important journey for me. And I don't want my worth to be tied up into my body because my body is going to change. I'm only turning 37. And when I'm 47, my body's going to look different. When I'm 57, my body's going to look different. I'm 67. And I feel like it's important for me to live a life of true longevity and joy and peace and happiness by taking away that variable of what makes me a particular person in this world, what makes me a healthy person, what makes me a valuable person, what makes me whatever. And I will too be honest and say that I have looked at some of my old pictures, and some days I am filled with sadness, and other days I remember how I felt during the times of being at my smallest. The sadness that I felt that I knew I had to get smaller in order to fit a particular stereotype. And if y'all have followed me on social media, the bobblehead era, I made it down to 191. And I was small like that at 191. And according to like most BMI charts, and y'all know I don't like to use BMI, but according to most BMI charts, I should be 132 from my height. I would have had to lose 60 more pounds. And I had already lost 80 something pounds by that point. And I would have had to lose six. I just want y'all to sit and think about that, like with me. If you remember what I looked like, I would have had to lose 60 more pounds in order to be acceptable. That would have been a total loss of about 140 pounds. That's ridiculous. But that is why I'm trying to take away this whole, I need to be a particular size to have these experiences, and I know that that is what has held me back from experiencing free will, of living my life, of just dating, of just having experiences, because it has been so like churned into my brain that in order to be loved and valued and being accepted, you have to have a particular look. You have to be a certain size. You know what I mean? And I think that is the hardest barrier that I've had to overcome in my adult life. I have moments where I remember I'm a big, y'all can't tell me that I'm not bad. But then I have moments where I feel like my inner child is like, hey, you remember that time when somebody told us that, bigger women don't deserve to be loved a certain type of way and they'll never be loved a certain type of way. And, you're just going to be used for love because you're bigger and blah, 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 blah. Like those kind of things do pop up in my mind. I'm really working through that, y'all. And I know that focusing more on these metrics, focusing on my actual health, focusing on my actual muscle building, focusing on actually healing my knee because my knee hurts. Okay. Focusing on those things, it will help me to be the version of healthy that I want to be again, and to find a balance in my life again that I feel like I deserve also. So, walk with me on the journey. I know a lot of y'all are probably trying to figure out some way to switch up your journey as well. But also don't forget that this is a lifelong thing. And what is very true about the fitness culture is that you're not set up for longevity. You're more so set up for here, lose this weight. And then after that, you figure it out the rest of the way, big dog, which is ridiculous that, we've been living through by that type of standard. But I want to be able to live life in a very vivacious type of way. And in order to live life vivaciously, my insides, I need to be healthy. I need to have the muscle mass. I need to control not control, but I need to get my gut health and my digestion in order. There's certain foods I can't eat anymore. When I went on the girls trip and I came back, I was on the train coming home, my tummy was swell up like a balloon. Swole up like a balloon because I ate a whole bunch of bullshit all weekend. It was good bullshit, though, I'm not gonna lie. But I had a lot of alcohol, a lot of sugar. My body can't take that much sugar anymore. Meats, we eat meats. Sugars is where my body is like, hey, I need you to chill out. Sugars, cheese, and some other things. Yeah. Yeah. We're not spring chickens. I can't fried food also. I cannot, I can barely do fried food anymore. Like it just, and then also with my gallbladder, I really have to stay away from a lot of fried foods. Like it sucks. It's hard. That's also one of the things that makes me feel weary about dating because it's like if I meet somebody, they gonna want me to cook all kind of goofy shit. Like I'm gonna be eating like I'm gonna be eating my ground beef and whatever and stuff like that during the week. Like I might learn how to incorporate other meals that are still gonna be anti-inflammatory, but you want me to make macaroni and cheese for you on a Wednesday? Huh? Like, that's nuts. Get out of here. Get out of here. But I think I've kept y'all long enough. This has been a pretty long episode, but it was a really good long catch up episode. I hope that this episode inspired you to be the healthy version that you want to be. Remember, your oxygen consumption during exercise is really important. That's how you're able to do those longer sprints. That's how you're able to sprint a little bit harder. That's how you're able to lift a little bit heavier because your body is able to consume oxygen and turn your glucose into energy as quickly as possible. I was going to talk about training zones today, but we'll save training zones for the next episode. Don't forget to follow me on social media. I will be talking about training zones on my social media pages. If you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at heyniquev, on Facebook, Redefining Wellness. Yep. And then if you are listening to the show, don't forget to find Redefining Wellness podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Once again, do not forget to like, rate, review, subscribe. We're on this journey, friend. Wellness is truly, 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 truly a journey. It can be exhausting. It can be a lot, but we can do amazing things on this wellness journey. You just have to make sure that it is about you, it's for you, it's curated for you, and you're not doing it for any. Thank y'all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for continuing to support this show. As erratic and spontaneous as this show can be sometimes, thank y'all so much for listening to the show. And thank you so much for being uniquely fit. See ya.